Good evening and welcome to RAMP, Real Access Progress live Wednesday night podcast. Again, we are so to be with you guys each and every week live. If you have any questions for our guest tonight, make sure you write comments. I am watching it live. You can answer your question live screen. So be it. So we are looking forward to it. We have a show for you tonight. We are talking all things travel with disability, whether you are traveling with somebody with disability or you are traveling yourself with disability. We are going to tell you what it's like us. And I have two great guests with me tonight. Welcome, ladies. I am so excited to have you guys on my show tonight.
Thanks for having me, Tina. So excited.
Thank you, Tina.
We are so excited to have you tonight. These are my dear friends, but they are not from Rhode Island, but I will let them tell you where they're from. Jenny, let's start with you. Tell everybody where you're from, what you do, and who you are, actually.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Jenny Siegel. I am 39 years old and I live in Aurora, Colorado. I was paralyzed when I was 9 months old from a rare virus, transverse myelitis, and I was originally paralyzed from my neck down. But with a lot of work with therapists and doctors, I've been able to regain pretty good use of my upper body. So I've been able to live a very, very productive life, which I'm very grateful for, sometimes almost too productive. At times, my schedule is just so crazy, but I couldn't be happier with what I do. I live independently in my own home. I drive my own vehicle. I work literally 3 jobs. My main full-time job, I am a producer for Altitude Sports. It's a regional sports network here in Denver. We are the TV home of the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, Colorado Rapids, Colorado Mammoth, and I just have to give a shout out to the Avs. We are off to the Stanley Cup Finals, so that makes me so happy on so many levels. I actually get to start producing some of the pre and post game shows that we're going to have on air next week once we get the schedule released. So that's going to be a really, really fun time for our network and for myself. So I'm really excited about that. I also work for the Colorado Rockies. I am an editor for them. So during baseball season, I edit highlights that happen in game, and I also play back all of our replays. So if you happen to be at the game and Charlie Blackmon, he hits a 3-run shot to left center field, I'm the one that replays those, and they go out on the Jumbotron, and then I edit highlights as the game goes on. So I do that for home games for the Rockies. And then just as of last season, I started to work with the Denver Broncos as a member of our PR game day staff. So I get to work at all the home games, and I'm basically like a liaison with the media and the team. So I get to help with the multiple duties throughout game days. So that's a lot of fun. And then one other thing that I'm very proud that I get to do, I'm very involved with an organization called Unite for CRT. And we get together once a month and talk about all things that people with disabilities have interest in, whether it's people with disabilities, whether it's caregivers, whether it's clinicians, suppliers. We all like to get together and have very educational discussions and a lot of fun too. So I get to host those meetings, and that's actually where I've had the pleasure of meeting all of you ladies that we're speaking to together tonight. So Unite for CRT is also another really big part of my life. So yeah, that's me.
So all of you that think that I am everywhere, if you go to Colorado, that Jenny me in Colorado, because she is everywhere out there. So see, I'm not a rare breed, because there are a lot of us out and about. And Jenny and Cody, Jennifer and Cody, the same thing. So could you tell us where you are and what you guys do?
Hi, I'm Jen, and this is Cody. We live on the opposite side of the state from Jenny. We live in Grand Junction, Colorado, so we're kind of on the dry side out in the desert. It's about a 5-hour drive from Denver. Cody is 15 years old. She has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. She was actually born in Alaska, and we started our advocacy career when she was about 9 months old. We actually went to the Alaska legislature and testified for the importance of Medicaid for persons with disabilities. She had a rough birth, which resulted in, well, it was hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, which basically means a lack of oxygen at birth, and which resulted in the cerebral palsies and onset of seizures as soon as she was born. So she spent 41 days in the NICU. But thankfully, in Alaska, there was a lot of money and a lot of resources. So she immediately started early intervention services when she was about 2 or 3 months old, which I really think helped her, advance forward, because she does really well. She's done a lot of good things in her life. And part of her individual education plan right now is actually moving forward with disability awareness and advocacy. So that's kind of fun. I am a parent member of the Governor's State Rehabilitation Council here in Colorado. So we do a lot of work with the Division of Vocational Rehab. Right now, we're working on a pilot program called Sequencing of Services, which is trying to bring information to families and educators, as well as all of the support providers, on how we can actually bring those things together so it's not so confusing for people to work on transition services for higher education or employment once a student leaves high school. And we've also been working with a grant that's from the Colorado Department of Developmental, no, I always get the acronym wrong, CDDC, Developmental Disabilities Council, and the Colorado Office of Employment First, where we made 2 focus groups, one for youth and one for families, to talk about, well, how do you best want to receive this information? And so that's been a really fun thing that Cody got to participate in as well. We also work with the Colorado Assistive Technology Coalition and Colorado Tech First. So we're really big into tech. Cody loves coding and other technology. We did a TED Talk a couple of years ago, actually right before everything shut down with COVID, about assistive technology and how it helps her be more independent. And she does a lot of coding. She takes classes from Code Ninjas. She actually did a commercial for them using her communication device, which was really fun. So we keep busy. She'll be a 10th grader next year in an online school, which has been a wonderful transition for her and for us as a family. So I guess in a nutshell, that's kind of what we do.
Yeah. So again, if you don't see me or you don't see Jenny, you're going to see Jen and Cody. So yeah, we pretty much kind of run the spectrum. This is part of being in the disability community and being advocates, because if you're not out there being seen and heard, you're forgotten and left behind. So we need to push forward for everybody. And didn't you just tell me that Cody was out volunteering today?
Yeah, she volunteers with her grandmother at the VA hospital here in town. So that's been a fun thing for her to do.
See that? So Cody is out there volunteering, so nobody else has any excuse why you can't get out there. But let's get into the heart of what we're here to talk about tonight, everything travel, because we know how much fun it is going about our daily lives, just in and around town and finding all of those inaccessible places. But now when we want to travel and we want to join exciting things, it makes it even worse. Like everybody knows that I'm going on 2 road trips, one each month. Heading off to Washington on Sunday, which I'm so excited about. It's about an 8-hour drive, so I'm looking forward to seeing how many accessible rest stops are along the way. So that should be exciting. And then I'm going to Florida. I'm going on a 21.5-hour trip to Florida on my own. So that should be exciting to see all of the wonderful accessibility, because I'm positive thinking there's going to be plenty of accessibility along the way. But Jenny, give us some of your experience of, because I'm sure you get out there and you travel. Give us some of your experience of traveling.
Yeah, I mean, I've done all forms of travel. I've traveled by plane. We've done a lot of road trips. I've even done when we went to Kauai a couple of summers ago. That was really interesting because unfortunately the island just isn't very accessible. And I knew that going into it, that it probably wouldn't be, unfortunately, and definitely did my research. And one of the things that I found to be very frustrating, and I am not one to sit back and miss out, and I'm very adventurous, so I wasn't again going to miss out. So we wanted to go on a catamaran tour of the Na Pali coast, and literally I tried to book it with 3 or 4 different companies, and they flat out would not book the trip with me because of me being in a wheelchair. They didn't want the liability for it. And I said, this is insane. I am making the choice. This is something that I really want to do. Like, I will sign forms. I will do whatever is necessary, because I don't know if I'm going to get back to Hawaii, and I'm not going to miss out on having an adventure like that. And
Right.
there were, like I said, at least 3 or 4 companies that I contacted, and they would not help me. And so we finally found this, it was a small family-owned organization, and they couldn't have been better to work with. They were absolutely wonderful. They definitely were not accessible. So we had to get creative on how I could board the boat and how we could get, I took my manual wheelchair on that trip. I didn't take my power wheelchair, but we had to get creative on how I was going to get on the boat and how I was going to be able to safely ride on the boat, because it was an all-day excursion. So I'm very petite. I couldn't just sit on one of their benches throughout the whole boat ride, because that wouldn't have been good for myself in many ways. So we had to get very creative, but this company was so wonderful to work with once I was very vocal and told them what I needed. And my mom loved her more than anything, and we joke about it all the time. And Tina, you've actually had the pleasure to do a podcast with myself and my mom, and we have this term called "Don't Tell Barb." And when I boarded the boat, that was by far a "Don't Tell Barb" moment, because it was literally a floating staircase that was not really attached to anything. It was at the dock, and then it was at the boat. And this staircase was so skinny, and I'm not a very big person, but literally what I had to do was have somebody from behind grab me under my arms, and my caregiver that went with us, and one of my very good friends, grabbed me under my legs, and the 2 of them carried me backwards down the steps on this boat. Eric went backwards, my friend Susanna went forwards, I should say. And the staircase was so skinny that they literally had to lift me up over the staircase, because otherwise we all wouldn't have fit down it. It was
Oh, geez.
the most interesting experience, but the whole time the literal captain of the boat was grabbing Eric and guiding him backwards down the stairs. They were so kind and so helpful. They made sure my chair got on the boat. It's one of those things that, like I said, I wasn't going to miss out. And that was one thing that I really needed to fight for. And I felt that I could be safe doing this. I wasn't going to put myself in danger, but I also wasn't going to miss out. So that was definitely one of my experiences where I had to be very vocal and say what I needed. And thank goodness we found a wonderful company that worked with us. And I gave them rave reviews, because they gave me the chance that I wanted to take.
And I truly believe that working with smaller family-owned organizations, you have a better shot, because they're more empathetic, they're more willing to give it a shot. And you know, I truly believe in this. We all have that "Don't Tell Barb" moment, you know, because we just go, shh, we won't tell anybody, just let us do it. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Jen, what's one of your experiences, positive or negative, traveling with Cody?
Oh my gosh, we have so many. We do a lot of traveling, but I think one of the biggest issues that we've had over the years, and most of the time our stories are pretty much good. I mean, we don't travel with her power chair. She has an AirHawk that we take with us if we're flying somewhere, so it folds up and it's a power chair. But they don't have to put it into the conveyor belt on the airplane and things like that. So, or we travel with her manual chair. But one of the biggest things are traveling with liquids, as all of you probably know, is Cody has a G tube. So all of her food is liquid. So when we're traveling with that, TSA just doesn't quite know what to do with us. They try to take all of the samples and make sure that it's not explosive material. We also travel with CBD because that helps regulate her seizures. And I talked to a TSI this has probably been 4 or 5 years ago, a TSI agent here in our town. And he was like, you know what, we're not looking for CBD. It's all right. Just, you know, don't make it stand out or anything like that. But it usually takes us a good 20, 30 minutes to get through TSA. And one of the biggest things, especially when she was younger, that was really difficult was, well, for instance, one day I think we were in Albuquerque and she must have had something on her hands, like fertilizer from wheeling her wheelchair. And so it set off an alarm, and instantly she had 6 officers around her. And she was maybe 8, 9 around in that time, it weighed 40 pounds or so. And there's all these people around checking out. And every time we fly somewhere, she gets way more security checks than anybody else does, checking her wheels, checking her hands. And, that's kind of an invasion of privacy, especially when she's at that age and really didn't quite understand what was going on. And, there's been a few times when I was overwhelmed by it because I'm like, why does she have to go through this?
Right.
So that's been one of, a big thing, but for the most part, we've had pretty good experiences, except traveling with liquids.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, we have to think about things that other people do not need to think about. Like, people have no idea. Like, now that more and more people are coming out and about with me, and I'm doing more lives of my day to day, because that's always an adventure. Of just me leaving my house is an adventure, because you never know what I'm going to get myself into. But I never thought of that, or I never thought of that. And they're like, you have no idea. Like, where I'm going to in Florida, the places that we're staying are all private condos, where each contestant is renting a private condo. Well, private condos in Florida do not need to be accessible. So none of the private condos are actually accessible, but there's a few on the first floor. So I'm bringing my own shower chair. I'm bringing my own bed transfer. You know what I mean? Like, I have to bring my own equipment with me, because yes, I can roll in and out of the room and the doors are wide enough because they measured my room, but there is no accessibility, because I had to go in knowing that I'm renting a condo that's does not have to be accessible. So it's barriers like that that people don't realize that we rush into. Jenny, you had another story?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, the main thing that I've learned, whether it's traveling by plane, and mainly by plane is the biggest one, is just to use it as a very educational experience. Because like you were saying, Tina, people just don't understand, because if they don't experience it, that they really don't understand. And so I am very thorough when I travel. Like, I am probably too thorough, but that's okay with me. Like, I feel better that I am that thorough. And one time when I was going through TSA, I actually had something very similar, Jen, and I won't tell the long version of the story about the hands, but I actually used some hemp's lotion on my hands. I got detained at the Washington Reagan International Airport for like 5 hours because of that lotion that I had on my hands. But with TSA, I have an indwelling catheter, so I have a leg bag, and TSA is not aware of what that is. So I literally had to explain to them, because they kept feeling something on my leg, and I said, it's a medical device, basically. And they're like, well, what do you mean it's a medical device? And I literally broke down what it was and how it worked and where it was. And they were like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad that you explained this to me.
Oh, that's good.
There's so many people that don't understand. And it's not that they're being, rude, or they're not thinking things through. They just don't get it. And I got thanked so much that I was willing to actually get into detail with them what it is, because they learned about that. And even with my power chair, whenever I fly, because I do fly with my power chair, I go when I check in upstairs right at the ramp, I ask to speak to one of the ramp crews, and they come up and I go through my chair piece by piece with them. I tell them exactly what they can and what they can't do. And it's been such a wonderful experience that I've been able to talk with these people, because most of the time they're very receptive, because they actually want to learn. And I wouldn't have thought that. And one time we were flying to St. Louis, and we were flying on this tiny little plane. It almost looked like a puddle jumper, excuse me. And the guy that I spoke with before we loaded onto the plane and showed him my chair, walked through it with him, he was very nice. And when we got on the plane, he came on the plane, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's coming to tell me they dropped my chair, they broke something, like, oh my goodness, why is he on the plane? And he came to me, and he was so kind. He took a picture on his cell phone to show me how he had my chair positioned, because I told him it has to stay upright. Nothing can sit, in my chair while it's flying. You can't put anything in it. It has to stay upright because of the batteries. You have to make sure you lock the brakes, put it in drive mode so that the brakes are literally locked, because if it's in push mode, my chair is just going to roll around in the bottom of the plane the whole time. And this guy was so kind. He came in, showed me that picture, and let me know that my chair was safe, and it was safe when I got back to Colorado. So that's the main thing that I would definitely say, is use it as a teaching moment, because there's so many people that they just don't understand. And it's not that they don't care to understand, they just don't.
And that's so true. You hear this word ableism a lot, and I don't like to call anybody names because I don't want anybody calling us names. So I don't like to use terms like that, because I do really believe that the majority of people have the best of intentions. They just don't know what to do, or they're frazzled at the moment because they're so afraid of making a mistake in this world, and don't want to say the wrong thing to us, that they just don't know what to do. So, kindly guiding them through it. Like, I know when I travel, I always travel with a checklist, and I always have the checklist on me at all times. This is my medications that I have with me. This is what I have with me. This is everything that I have on my chair. If you don't do things like that, you're setting yourself up for failure. It's the same thing that if you were going on a business trip, you would make sure that you had all of your business stuff in a row, your business cards, your program, your computer. It's the same thing, except for we have a little bit extra things going on. Jen, how does Cody do with the transfer chair on an airplane?
He actually does really well. We've only used a transfer chair a few times because she's gotten taller than me. So trying to get her up the stairs or up the ramps is a little bit difficult. So that's kind of been a new thing that we've used. She can walk with assistance, so that is helpful. And especially when she was younger, we were able to easily get her on. But the transfer chairs work really well, and we just take advantage of all of the amenities that are at an airport. Taking like, we're going to fly to Houston in August, and so we'll just put her AirHawk in a container that we have, and just check it. And then we'll just use a wheelchair that they have there with the concierge to take her through the airport. And I didn't used to do that. I used to think, oh, I got to do it all myself. And I don't know how many times I've ran through the airport with a suitcase and pushing her in a manual chair to get around. And I just realized I don't have to do that anymore. There's people there that can help. So.
Yeah. Jenny, do you want to explain to those who may not know what we're talking about the aisle chair?
Yeah, the aisle chair is just a very small, slender chair that we transferred into when we're boarding the plane. And that's how you actually get onto the plane. And the aisle chair is so skinny that it can roll you down the aisle. So no matter how many rows back, you can still row or roll to where you need to go. And then you can either transfer or get the assistance to get out of the aisle chair and actually get in to the seat on the plane. And when I travel, because I'm so small and petite, I actually just have whomever I'm traveling with carry me on. So I don't use the aisle chair, because for me, it's almost, it just makes it easier to lift me on. But the aisle chair is a wonderful option for people that are traveling alone, or that are able to, transfer, or there's people there that can help assist with the transfers as well.
Yeah. One thing I want people to know is, once somebody in a wheelchair is put on an airplane, we basically are stuck in that chair until we land to get off the plane. We can't use the bathroom or anything like that. We can't, I loved it when, somebody's like, do you need to get up and stretch your legs? I'm like, it really won't do me any good since I don't feel them, but thanks for offering, kind of thing. But yeah, we can't get up and use the bathroom or anything. So, when you're going on those long flights, it's sometimes, pretty scary and hairy when you're like, okay, I really need to go. So somebody like Jenny, they could probably just carry you to the bathroom or something if you really needed to.
If that was what I needed, 100%, absolutely. Because we like to fly Southwest. That's my preferred airline, because they are, for what I've learned, they have the best customer service. They work so well with me, and they're very accommodating with my wheelchair. They're very accommodating with how I pre-board. And what I really like about Southwest is we usually always get to sit in the very front seat. Because of us pre-boarding, nobody has assigned seats with Southwest. So we can just go in and get those couple of front seats. And that works really, really good, because there's room for someone to transfer me to help. Because like you pointed out, Tina, once we're in that seat, you don't get up again. But sometimes I do need to reposition a little bit. My booty gets a little sore and need to move around for those smaller or for those longer flights. And it actually gives the room for somebody to help me reposition myself once I've been on the plane for a while. So Southwest by far has been the most accommodating airline I've ever flown. And I've flown a bunch.
That's what that's what I've heard too. Do you have a preference, Jen?
Well, we live in kind of a rural area, so we don't have a lot of options. We have American and United, and we just have a really small airport here. So, but however, though, when we lived in Alaska, when Cody was little, Alaska Airlines was phenomenal. And it's just that they don't have a lot of the resources here because it is a smaller airport. But I know you both are probably familiar with Corey Lee from Curb Free. Corey Lee, and he traveled to every continent by the time he was 30 years old. And he was a wheelchair user with a degenerative muscular disease. And he talks about in some of his essays and things that he has written about how he has to fast 24 hours before he flies anywhere because he, again, can't get up and go use the restrooms. I mean, even like with Cody, the two of us couldn't fit into the bathroom in there. But when he first started talking about that, I said, oh my gosh, that is just so dramatic that he has to do that in order to travel and meet his goals and get where he wants to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I mean, I know for myself, when I know that I'm going on a drive or I'm going to be out for the day, I will limit what I eat. Like, even if I'm being invited out to lunch or something, I probably won't eat or anything because you don't know if the bathrooms are going to be accessible. And that's, just ready out in your city or town. You do that. I can't imagine on going a longer flight and having to hold it and not having an option at all, So we really need to do better there. Have either of you traveled on a train? I know we have a train here. The only problem I don't like about the train here is they have one wheelchair accessible spot in this car and one wheelchair accessible spot in that car. So if me and Jenny wanted to go on a train trip together, we'd be 2 cars apart, which is kind of not fun. And I think, but have either one of you had any train experience?
Yeah, Cody, what did you think about the train? Did you like the train? Yeah, we decided to take Amtrak from Grand Junction just to Glenwood, just because she wanted to ride the train and we hadn't been on a train before. So there wasn't a ramp. So they carried her up in her wheelchair. They had a couple of guys and they carried her up. And I think they did have tie downs. I can't remember now. It's been a while, but we may have just put her in a regular seat. And we were traveling with my mom and dad because it was just kind of a day trip type of thing. So we get to Glenwood Springs, and again, they lifted her off, and nobody was there. They just left us on this platform in Glenwood
Oh, no.
Springs. And there was nobody around. The ticket office was closed. We couldn't find a ramp to get out off of this ramp and up into Glenwood Springs. And so some bystanders helped us get her up the stairs and onto the sidewalk, which was, a pretty hefty type of thing. But yeah, we just got left on this ramp.
Oh that's crazy.
Jenny, what's your experience?
I've done quite a few train rides, actually. One of my first ones was when I was in high school. One of my best friends lived in Flagstaff, Arizona. So my mom and I took a train to Raton, New Mexico, and then we drove the rest of the way. And at that point, honestly, the train wasn't very accessible. So kind of similar to what Jen was saying with Cody, like they had to lift me onto the train, and I actually just sat in a regular seat during the train ride. My mom just transferred me to a regular seat. I didn't ride in my wheelchair. But recently, like I was in Chicago 2 summers ago, and we took a train from Chicago to Milwaukee because I'm a huge sports fan, as I kind of said. And we try to go to different ballparks when we're in different states. So we took a train from Chicago to Milwaukee, and that was actually very accessible. They had a lift that I was able to ride up on the lift on. Like Tina was saying, though, there's only so many cars you can sit in, though, and there's only so many spots. But they did have the lift. They were able to tie me down, which we're both very big positives. And then last summer we went to Pagosa Springs and we did a train ride from Gunnison to Silverton, or I'm sorry, Durango to Silverton, and then Silverton back to Durango. And that was actually very accessible as well. I could take my power chair, I could load it on. The only thing that was frustrating for me is there was literally one spot, and there was another gentleman that was in a power wheelchair as well, and he was just bigger in general, so he had a bigger wheelchair. He just didn't fit in other areas as well as I could, so I was more than happy to give him the quote unquote designated spot, and I just kind of sat in the aisle and just kind of hung out next to Eric during the train rides, because there was really nowhere else for me to go.
Yeah,
because the car with the lift, you couldn't go to connecting cars. I just had to stay on my car. And since that gentleman was in that spot, I just kind of made my own spot. So if people had to, get up and go to the restroom or whatever, I had to keep moving and, getting out of the way. And it worked, but it wasn't the most convenient setup.
Well, I know the train that goes from here to Washington is pretty accessible because Congressman Langevin takes it. I was going to take it when I was going down to Washington, but their cabs down there are not so reliable. But it's going to be fun to watch a whole bunch of us, because I'm going down for United Spinal. So there's going to be a whole bunch of us from all over the country, all in wheelchairs in different shapes and sizes wheelchairs. And we're going to take the subway from our hotel to the Capitol. Nice. So we have made some arrangements so that they know that there's going to be a ton of wheelchair users using the subway that day. So we're hoping that they remove some seats, because they can. If you call ahead, they can remove seats. So that way, if you and a friend wanted to take the train or the subway, at least I know down here near us, you can make arrangements, but you've got to make those arrangements a couple of weeks in advance when you buy your tickets to make sure that they can do that. And always ask, when you get to your destination city, make sure before you book your ticket, they have accessible cabs or taxis that can take you from the train to wherever you want to go. Because if you get here in Rhode Island, we have one wheelchair accessible taxi in the entire state. So you want to make sure that it's available for you when you come down and it's not out for repair like, all the others are, usually. So, always call ahead and make your arrangements. I think that's your best bet always. Call, ask, check in, recheck in, and finally check in to make sure that you are all on the same page. Because I can tell you guys, how many guys have you guys called the restaurant and asked them if they were accessible, and you get there and there's one step? They're like, there's only one step. And it's like, okay, when you walk through that wall, I'll do that one step. Same comparison. Let's play. So just doubly make sure that you're saying, can I roll right in? Is it flat? Right. Use those words, because sometimes when you don't use a wheelchair, you're not thinking about that. You're not thinking about those tiny little one steps or little bumps in the road that you're not missing, or missing a platform. You know what I mean? Like getting from the platform to the train. You'd hate to fall between the train, because that would be bad. So make sure you're physically asking, and it sounds dumb, but you need to ask and make those. What is some of your tips that you can give, Jenny?
I mean, the main thing whenever I'm planning a trip is it's definitely a whole lot of planning. It's making sure that my hotel is accessible. When I book the flight, I give like a description what I need when I book my flight. It's about being very, very detailed, and I'm very much a planner person to begin with, but I literally have to come up with an itinerary for my trip so that I know that, hey, we're going to go to this place today, and I got to make sure this place is accessible. And then if it isn't accessible, then we're going to have to probably give ourselves a little bit more time that day, because I'm going to have to be flexible, because things aren't going to go as smoothly as you would like them to. And that's it's planning, asking so many questions, like you were saying. I mean, it might seem dumb to ask the questions that we ask, but you need to ask them, because it's terrible to get someplace and then you can't access your hotel room, or you can't do the things you need to do. And you just need to have a ton ton of patience, because again, things aren't always going to go the way you want it to. I did a girls trip in Chicago back in 2007, and they were literally doing work on almost every other subway stop. And there's only so many stops in Chicago that's accessible the way it is. And so they were doing work on some of the stations, so I couldn't always go to where I needed to be without taking huge detours. And that was like a lesson learned for me, because we did do some research, and I was only 21 at the point. So like I did not get as thorough as I should have been. But one of my girlfriends that we went with, she had been to Chicago multiple times. She works for United Airlines. She's like, oh yeah, transportation is accessible. You can get on and off the subway. Absolutely. Well, yeah, I could if those stops were open. So we had to take so many detours, take buses instead of trains. I mean, there's always something that comes up, and you just need to be willing to roll with the punches, because things are going to come up and you need to adjust. But as long as you are as diligent as you can be with your planning and lining things up and asking those questions, you're setting yourself up for such a better experience. And it's a lot of work to do those things. Absolutely it is. But when I go out of town, I want to enjoy it. I want to be able to see things
Exactly.
that I wouldn't get to see, or that I usually don't get to do. So is it a lot of work? 100% it is, but it's 100% a payoff when you get to do the things you want to do.
Yeah. Jenny, do you have any tips for us?
Well, I just echo what Jenny is saying. We did a trip to Washington, D.C. for the Walk for Epilepsy a few years ago. And I had researched the taxis and researched the subways. And we got stuck in the subway in Washington, D.C. We couldn't figure out where the accessible elevators were to be able to get back up to street level. And it got to be a little scary. My mom was about to have an anxiety attack. And so we finally stopped somebody that knew where it was. I think she was an off-duty person that worked there, and we had to go down underneath the subway to get back up the other side. But there was no signage to tell us what to do or anything like that. And so then once we got off the airplane and we're going to our hotel, there was the wheelchair accessible taxi that picked us up. And it was like a little minivan, and they shoved Cody back in there. I don't think he'd ever used it before, and tied her down. She was facing backwards out the back of the van. And I'm trying to hang on to her and comfort her. And we finally get there, and yeah, that was crazy. And then we were out walking around doing just sightseeing and stuff, and it starts pouring rain. And thankfully she was in her manual chair, not her power chair, but nobody would stop. None of the taxis would stop for us, and my mom would not get into an Uber. So finally somebody, I think, took heart on, because we were just soaked, and we put her chair in the trunk of the taxi, and he got us back to where we needed to go. But yeah, I think just having a sense of humor and a willing to have teachable moments, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think if anybody listening to this, you want to have a good afternoon, we need to just tell some of our funny days out, because I'll tell you, every day I leave my house, it's a new adventure. I don't know and this is in my own state. This is like things that I do every day, and it's a new adventure. I just went to go do a roll through to one of the local colleges, because they have 3 students coming in wheelchairs in the fall. So they wanted me to kind of assess, because they didn't have this many wheelchair users at the college at one time. And we had a great roll through. That the college was, pretty good set for them. I mean, few minor tweaks and stuff. So I say goodbye to everybody, and I'm going to go to roll in my car. They're like, you need us to go with you? I'm like, it's right there. It's 1 block down. I'm fine. I'm by the water. I'm good. Not 500 feet from them, my wheels fall off my wheelchair on a tiny little curb cut, and my wheels fall off my wheelchair. Now I'm in the middle of the road, and I went to go fix it and lean over to try to get my wheel, and fell out of my wheelchair and tipped it. So now my power wheelchair is sideways. I'm on the ground. I got no wheels on my wheelchair, and cars drove around me. I'm like, you see a wheelchair sideways. And then finally somebody comes up to me and is like, do you need any help? I'm like, what do you think? How many times? I said, this is not the spot that I picked to take a nap. So you have to laugh at it, because this is like daily stuff that happens to us. And it's so funny that you just need to have a sense of humor, be comical about it, and you know what, roll with, like Jenny says, roll with the punches. Because if you want an adventure, go out with one of us, because I'll tell you, you will have an adventure at some point. Something will happen and you will have an adventure, good or bad. You will have a story to tell later on. Jenny, now that we're nearing the end of the hour, why don't you give us your final comments to everybody and let them know how they can contact you or be involved in anything that you're doing, especially Unite for CRT.
Absolutely. Well, kind of just my final thoughts, whether it's travel, whether it's, trying to get this new job, whether it's, moving into a new neighborhood, whatever it is don't be scared. Don't have fear. I mean, I know we live a different life than some individuals, but we live a pretty great life though too. And you have every right to get out there and explore, meet people, go after that new job, do whatever it is that you are, thinking about doing, whether it's, taking that trip, going for that new job, talking to your new neighbor, whatever it is, everybody has the right to do those things. And don't ever let yourself be the reason why you don't. Do it. You need to do it, because you're going to have you're going to be a happier person and you're going to have a much better life. So don't hold yourself back, because you could be, on a podcast one day sharing these great stories as well, because everybody has the right to do that. So you get out there, experience life is my main thing. There's a lot of different ways you can contact me. I'm on social media, Jenny Siegel on Facebook. Please feel free to follow me. I'm at J_Siegel, SIEGLE. It's on the screen. That's my Twitter handle. And on Instagram, I do have my own website, JennySiegel.com, just as it is on the screen, just JennySiegel1word.com. You can contact me through my website as well. And then with the Unite for CRT, we're very connected with NARTS. You can get more information from NARTS's website. They are nrrts.org. They have a link to Unite for CRT on their page, and you can see a list of all of our upcoming meetings, the topics we're going to be discussing. The one that's coming up on June 26th, I'm going to be interviewing Chris Collin. He is very, very knowledgeable in the adaptive sports world, and he just does everything out there, from skiing to cycling to fishing. I mean, he does everything. So it will be a very educational meeting. So we would love for you guys to join us there, and you can register through NARTS's website to get a part of those meetings.
And if you forgot any of that, just contact me and I can put you in contact with Jenny, and I can give you all the links, because I go to all of these meetings. And for all of you that wanted more of Chris Collins when he was on my show just a couple of months ago, here's your opportunity to go over to NARTS and hear more about what Chris does, because he is just a phenomenal human being. I just want to piggyback something before we go to Jen of what you said, Jenny. As much as we as a disabled person have the right to go out, please have an open mind to those of you who are able-bodied, normal, regular, whatever you want to call yourselves, because I don't know what normal is. I don't think I was ever normal, even when I was walking, but that's beside the point. But be open-minded to meet somebody with a disability, or meet somebody in a wheelchair, or meet them where they are, because I'll tell you, if you're missing out on these people, you are missing out on some incredible people by shying the other way or thinking that less than of them. You are missing out on some really, really incredible people. So be open-minded and meet somebody new. Jen, what's your final thoughts?
I agree. You just have to get out there. That's been one of my biggest goals with Cody, is just to get her out into the world, because it's not only good for her, but it's good for those that are around her as well. I said in our TED Talk that it's fun to travel, because not many people are used to seeing a little girl in her pink chair traveling around, and we get into some great conversations with people, and I really think that. And we have a lot of organizations that are close by to us that really help out with some of our travels, like adaptive sports centers. Cody skis, she does zip lines, she swam with dolphins. She goes to a great school where they load up 4 or 5 kids in their wheelchairs in a bus and take them to go look at petroglyphs. There's just so many opportunities out there. And sometimes you got to ask. You have to say, hey, can we do this? Just like Jenny did with her catamaran ride, and you can make it possible. Just don't give up and don't be afraid to ask, because the opportunities are there.
Absolutely. I have done more since being in my wheelchair in the last 9 years than I did when I was walking. I have been surfing, I've been rock climbing, I've been hiking, I've been horseback riding. I have done so many things from my wheelchair just to prove when somebody told me that you can't do it. I'm like, yeah, watch me. I'm going to do it. And that's it. You ask, you make the accommodations. And you know what? I tell people, as long as I fall on my legs, I don't feel them anyway. So it's not going to hurt. So let's keep going. You know what I mean? So, have a little fun with it. Believe the person that you're moving and the disability, go with what their comfort level is, and just involve them. Just be part of them, because I'm telling you, if you're not meeting, look at this. How awesome it'd be to know Jenny and all the famous people that she knows and all the sporting arenas and all the tech that she gets to do. How cool is that? And I mean, to go out and volunteer with Cody, with all of our veterans and all of the stuff and the travel that she does. I mean, here's two really incredible women that you'd be missing out on if you shied away from, people of disability. So include them, be them, support them, be a warrior, and don't take no for an answer, because I know I sure don't, because I will run over you with my sparkly wheelchair and I will get my way one way or another. So plow your way right through. Thank you, ladies, so much for taking the time tonight, for being on the show. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And like I said to everybody, if you want to get in touch with these two amazing ladies and learn more about what they do and how you can be involved, reach out to me. But definitely Unite for CRT is a place where you can go and hang out. You do not need to have a disability to be part of those meetings. You could be part of those meetings to learn, to educate yourself, to open your perspective, and to change your mind. So we're going to put the link for Unite CRT in the bottom of this chat when I get off the call tonight, so that way everybody can join in on that, because I'll tell you, it's a great monthly call. I'm on a lot of them. I miss a lot of them because I got my things to do, but you can always check in, and that's the nice part. You check in when you can and you check out when you can't, and they're always there to welcome you with open arms no matter what. So thank you so much, ladies, for being part of this tonight. Thank you for all of your that you do in your advocacy, and maybe next year I will be turning over my national crown to Jenny next year, because we're going to get her involved as well. So you never know, and somewhere down the road we'll be crowning Cody. So it's all good. We're a sisterhood, and that's what it's all about. Thank you so much, ladies. We'll see you all soon. I just want to invite everybody back here next week, same time, same channel. The only thing is it will not be the same host. We will have a guest host in here next week. One of my board members, Diana Perkins, who runs her own business called Include Design, will be hosting the event, because I will be driving home from Washington. So I will not be able to host and drive. I'm good, but I'm not that good. So we will have a guest host in here next week. So see you all here next week. Make sure you're reaching out to somebody new. And as I always say, don't just sit there, make a difference. Have a great night, everybody.
To take home the Golden Gloves, you've got to put in the work, and you've got to be tough as nails. Ashley Kalis was driven to achieve. Today, Kalis is still fueled by that same hope, grit, and determination. A mother of 3 school-aged boys and successful business owner who ran testing and vaccination sites across the state. Kalis is the fighter Rhode Island needs right now, because it's time for a change. Ashley Kalis for governor.